Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app, O'Connor and Company.
7:07 now as we kick things off on hour 3. Thanks for being part of O'Connor and Company, and I'm glad we're here to get you rolling this morning. Coming up in 30 minutes, wake the kids. Actually, no. Don't let the kids anywhere near this conversation. Kurt Schlichter will be our guest. Talk about his brand new book. It's Larry O'Connor with Julie Gunlock. Good morning, Julie. How are you?
Good morning.
I was kidding. Kurt's a gentleman. He's an officer and a gentleman, in fact, and he's just fine with that conversation. Joining us right now, friend of the program, Carrie Severino with Judicial Crisis Network. What a remarkable and enlightening day at the Supreme Court yesterday, Carrie. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks. Good to be here. It was a great day.
First, on the merits of this argument, this is Slaughter v. Trump. It has to do with the president and executive power with regard to so-called independent commissions and agencies like the FTC in this question. Can you just quickly divine why that's different than Spicer v. Biden? Biden came in and basically fired a bunch of political appointees that Trump had put in there. That these are appointees that had long traditionally been sort of transcended from one administration to the other. Spicer sued, and that set the precedent that this president has used to sort of clean house at the Kennedy Center, et cetera. How is that different than what we heard yesterday?
Well, in some senses, it's the same. It's Spicer versus Biden, and actually my own husband, Roger Severino, was fired in a similar fashion from a commission, and they lost at these lower courts because this Humphreys executor precedent is in place currently. This 90-year-old precedent the court's now reconsidering, and they were allowed to be fired ultimately because they were different from the FTC in that case. These are slightly lower level positions. They didn't have the same regulatory authority. And so this case really hits Humphreys square between the eyes because it is the FTC. You can't argue this is a little different than what they were looking at there because it's exactly the same agency, even if it's possible that some of the things it's doing are slightly different than they were in 1935. But it's the same agency. So now we can take that precedent out.
So, Carrie Severino, we played a lot of the audio about an hour ago, and I asked the rhetorical question, if the executive branch doesn't have agency over these, even though despite the first line of the Article 2 of the Constitution, then what's the argument? Those who were arguing on behalf of Ms. Slaughter, what's their solution? Who does have authority over these appointees?
Well, that's kind of the mystery. I think they would say this is created by Congress, and so Congress can kind of set the terms for how some of these heads of other agencies are dealt with, in allegedly independent agencies. And the real question before the court is, can we have anything that's actually independent of political control and of a political branch of government? One of the really enlightening lines of questioning was when they said, wait, what if we took all of the traditional cabinet positions and you just restructured them as a multi-member commission along the lines of the FTC? Could you do that? Could you then lock in, the head of the Department of Defense or the Secretary of State for the next 20 years by giving them really long terms? And they didn't really have a good answer for that. And not having a stopping point is death in a Supreme Court argument. So I think that's a real bad sign for them.
So the argument that appeared to be welcomed by Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson was that, listen, for some of these things that the government does, it's so complex, you want experts in place. You don't want a new president coming in and just firing all these experts and putting in political appointees. You need to have experts who know their stuff and are credentialed and are going to be able to actually execute these very important and difficult government functions. What's wrong with that argument?
Well, the problem is we aren't a government of experts. We are government elected by the people. And are the people of America have to be able to have a voice in who is running our country. So we can't simply just offload to experts, all of our governance. And frankly, even if that were a, quote, better way to do it, we're stuck with the fact that the Constitution sets up the government a certain way. So if you think this is what we need to have government of experts, then, okay, let's get around to doing some constitutional amendments to do that. But we don't just have the Supreme Court overriding what our fundamental constitutional structure of three branches and checks and balances and all of that, because we think, well, I think I know how to do it better.
Sonia Sotomayor said you're asking us to destroy the structure of government, which seems a bit dramatic. But isn't that what we do every time we elect a new president? We allow him to sort of destroy what's been put in place. And again, that word is a little bit dramatic, but destroy what's been put in place and put his own people in. That's sort of the point, correct?
Yeah, she's going even farther, I think, though, because what she's saying is, look, for 90 years, we've been running the government this way where we assume large portions of the people who are making the real laws and regulations that we have to abide by as citizens that have major consequences for huge swaths of society. Those people can be done separately. They don't have to be really fully accountable to the government. And, yeah, that would be a change. But what Solicitor General John Sauer was saying is, yeah, we're changing it to go back to the original understanding of the Constitution. So if this is a dramatic change, then what you're saying is right now we dramatically are departing from what the Constitution requires.
Based on your observation of the arguments and what the justices were saying, how do you think this one's going to come out?
Boy, I counted 5 or 6 votes at least for overturning Humphreys, at least in the extent that definitely Trump's going to be able to fire this FTC commissioner. Now, it's anyone's guess as to exactly how specific they get and how far this reaches. I think what we could tell from the arguments is there are going to be some unsettled questions after this, and after this case, so there'll be more litigation. You know, does it apply to this agency? Does it apply to that agency down the road? But I do think this is a big step in the direction of presidential authority being returned to the office.
Is Trump, in his role here, in sort of his actions bringing about this lawsuit, has he attempted to do something that really no prior president has attempted to do with regard to these agencies? And if so, why hasn't any other president tried to do this in the last several decades?
Well, I think part of, the perfect storm that we have here is the fact that you have a president who's willing to push the envelope on things, but the envelope was prepared, and the conservative legal movement for years has been working on this. The Supreme Court doesn't like to just walk in and overturn a precedent, even if they think that precedent's bad. You have to spend years kind of exploring the edges of it, pointing out how it is inaccurate, how it shouldn't apply here, it shouldn't apply there, and then eventually you start to look at the whole scheme that's out there and going, oh, this really doesn't fit, does it? That's what's been going on for decades. And what's interesting is, Biden actually took a lot of these steps last term, so we can maybe thank President Biden a little bit in firing people like Sean Spicer or Roger Severino. Yeah. He went through and kind of cleaned house, and so then it's like, all right, well, if Biden's going to do it, Trump's going to do it times 10, right? So that really opened the door for this next step. Not to mention the Supreme Court we have now. I mean, that really
there's that.
He really prepared the ground by putting those nominees on the Supreme Court in his first term, or he wouldn't have had a court that would be he could have fired anyone he wanted to, and they would have just said, nope, Humphrey's executor, and sent him home.
When you say Trump is willing to sort of push the boundaries, but you don't mean constitutional boundaries, though, do you?
No, I mean if people might say, hey, we've always done it this way. I think the importance is trying to draw that line, and you can't go in and just say, well, I can do whatever I want and dare them to stop me. I think that is, and to the extent that there are people arguing for that, I don't think that's the way to go. Right? The way to go is to say, hey, we're going to be radically constitutionalist about this, and that does require some courage, but I think it's courage that's cabined in by our actual constitutional structure, and that's what can keep it from spiraling out of control.
All right, well, we'll look forward to the decision when it comes down. Always informative, Carrie, and I give Roger our best. Thanks for joining us.
All right, thanks.